Welcome to this class about gouache. My name is Jacobina Ulle, and these are 5 classes with the goal of learning how to manage gouache. And we're going to make a lot of color charts so you learn what it does on the paper, how much water to mix, and how they are mixing together to get a certain color. I would suggest when you use it to going out in the field that you don't carry a big box of 250,000 colors, but that you learn to mix the color yellow, blue and red with white to create the colors that you need. My motto is keep it simple, especially when you go out in the fields, because it's already hard enough to tackle the wind, to understand the sun, to deal with fire ants, to whatever you need. It's not easy to do plein air painting. When you have the gouache and a sketchbook, a high quality sketchbook, you can make some thumbnail sketches, come back the next day and understand a little bit what your subject is going to be and how the sun is going to affect it. So it's actually a little bit a pre-making of a painting that you're going to later make in oil paint. I would say gouache resembles most oil paint because we do mix it with white. See, acrylic is transparent. Even though when you mix it with white, you get a more opaque color, it still stays transparent, and that's how you also can work it with layers, many layers. I'm in Florida, and with the Florida sun, to paint outside with acrylics is actually no fun at all because it dries way too fast, even on your palette where you want to mix the colors. It's impossible. That is the reason why I started painting with oil paints into the fields. Now I have discovered gouache, and I have to tell you that I have not done gouache in a very long time, probably ever since I was a child. And I'm very excited to play with it again. And I hope you are too. Gouache has been around for probably as long as humanity is there. Gouache is basically pigment with a little bit of a binder, and the binder can be anything. Very often they use it together with gum arabic, just like watercolor, but watercolor stays more transparent. So they add another something to it to make it opaque, and it's a chalky binder. I'm not a producer of all this, so I don't really know. I only know that it is nice to layer, it is nice to mix and get the right colors. But it has been around as a paint the longest ever. People used to mix it with egg yolk, making it into a tempera, and food, whatever they could find, they would mix it so it would stay good for a long time. And diving into the subject, I was actually happily surprised with the high quality of paintings and how long they actually became. They're still there thousands of years later, which is totally amazing to me. Henri Matisse used it a lot. I don't know why he chose gouache. Maybe because he could master, it's easier. At that time I don't think there was acrylic paint, so he could, it was faster, it dried faster, basically. Now you and I are going to start with making color charts, so you know how to mix the colors. You do this at home in the safe environment of the house, and you only carry 3 or 4 tubes of gouache into the fields. By simplifying these steps, you will be able to master it to an extent that it is very useful for your oil paint colors. So let's go ahead and let's go look at the very first demonstrations. This, by the way, is a painting of Jacob Philip Hackert. It's all made with gouache, which is amazing. I don't know that many professional artists who worked with it because I wonder if the paper is very durable. Here are my colors that I'm using, and I will explain a little bit more when we talk in real life how colors work. There's cool colors and there's warm colors. You actually really only, when you go in the field, you take one of each. Now, this is a simple tool. You know this for eggs, and you have water, and you have a pencil, and you need a ruler, a flat brush, and a pointed brush. That's basically all we're going to work with. Now, I use the viewfinder a lot, and I also use a template, that's the inside of a viewfinder, that always has the same measurements. Now I'm going to use the template of the inside of the viewfinder to make a new template for 1-inch squares, which we're going to use to make our color charts. So if you take the trouble to do this, you only have to do it once. It is fairly easy then to set up your grid for the color charts. I would suggest you do this maybe on a regular basis, or maybe when you know you're going to paint a lot of greens, that you make some different greens at home before you go out, so that you don't have to do that outside. It's much easier to work inside and to know where you more or less already want to go. For example, when we make green with lemon yellow and ultramarine, we create something different than when we have cadmium yellow, which is a warmer green, and indigo. They're both blue and they're both green, yellow, and they make green, but they all have different hues. And to do that before you go out is not a bad idea. Then also choose your paper carefully. This is watercolor paper, but it has a rough texture. I would not suggest you do that. The paper I'm using here is fairly rough texture. I don't have the cover anymore, so I don't know what paper it is. I think it's a cheap kind of paper, and while working a little bit more on it, actually, it became tired easy, meaning the fibers get loose and it becomes a little bit rough. So here's how I use my template. I make the squares. I make quite a bit. You can do less, make a different template, but to make many of them, it's streamlining the process basically of your 1-inch squares. There's people who just do it roughly with a brush stroke. You can do that too. I am very methodical and I like to have them all the same as well. So in this example, I'm using the lemon yellow and red, and the red is alizarin and crimson. See, they use different words. Every brand uses different words. It looks like that's the same color the same pigment, but it's not. So be very careful. Don't assume that ultramarine from one brand is the same ultramarine from another brand. Sometimes it's darker, sometimes it's lighter. It is not universally the same. And in this case, and I'm not really familiar with what I have, so I do want to know what the colors really are. Also, how dark they really get. So we get the full color and a flat brush. I'm not using my egg carton. I'm using this just because it looks a little bit cleaner and you can see better how I'm mixing it. This is black and this is white. So let's do that first, because black and white and all the gradations is kind of interesting to see as well. Now I'm only diluting it with water. And that's another possibility. Every color you have, you can dilute with water until you have a certain gray tone. Now I have 6 variations going lighter and lighter. The paper is not really absorbing that much, and what I notice is the brush has strokes, so it's not, see, watercolor would leave a more even mark. Gouache leaves brush strokes. Now I'm going to make a different gradation, and that's with white. I'm going to add white to it, which now I can also make the values. I have 8 different values here, and I mix it on the paper, which actually is not really a good idea. Again, because the paper is getting tired fast. So I would suggest you do your mixing on your mixing palette, your palette. The good thing is that the gouache dissolves again and again and again. So you can play with it. You can let it dry and play with it. I will let you watch the video a little bit, but I am going to speed it up because it's way more important that you do the work and you figure this all out by yourself, how it will work for you. This is supposed to be pure white, but there's a little bit of black on my brush and it comes out gray. Be aware of that, because whatever is in your brush will stay there until you really, really rinse it well. Clean your brush on a regular basis. Now what I'm trying to do is take each gray tone mixed with white, now mixing it with water, so I'm more and more diluting it. To tell you the truth, I have a hard time doing this. Maybe you are better at this, but this is probably why it is not easy to work with gouache. It sort of has a will of its own. But diluting it with water is definitely another way you can work with it. So do the best you can, and then we're going to look at the colors. So now I have crimson red and lemon yellow, full color. No water, no, it's just, this is how dark the color gets. Now I'm adding a little bit of water. Now I'm adding a little bit more water. It's almost like magenta. It's actually a very nice color, but it's a cool red. And I'm adding a cool yellow. Out in the fields, very often you use cool colors, unless you have bright colors in front. Now I'm going to add a little bit of yellow. And it becomes orange, of course. And then I'm adding a little bit more water. These sequences are really hard to do, but take your time doing them so that you know what your capabilities are as soon as you go out in the field. I'm going to speed up the video again, and you make your own. I mean, this is very important work that you're doing. One thing I want to say though before we go to different colors, this is blue mixing with red and a little bit of white, is that you need to clean everything thoroughly before you go to the next step. That is something also important to remember when you're out in the field. You either grab a bunch of brushes that you can more or less each brush keep for a certain color, or you take a lot of water that you can rinse and really clean thoroughly on a regular basis. Now I wanted to show the red, how it mixes with the blue, and of course you get purple, but I couldn't really do it because it was all too dark. So now I'm mixing a little bit white from the start, which makes the sequence a little bit harder to grasp. But you get what I'm doing, and whatever sequence you want to make, please do it. You can go to the whole sequence of red and white and water, or you can, like what I'm doing here, make the purples and then mix them with white so that it's visible for you. Again, clean all the time is super important. Now you can mix this with another color, and that is yellow, to make a more subdued color, less bright. Seriously, you can play with these color charts for a long time and you get the feel of, okay, if I do a little bit of that, a little bit of water, a little bit of white, then I'll get that. I had a student ask me lately, well, I don't see it. How much red do you really put in? How much white is that really? But we don't know. I don't know. There's not even a percentage. It's not science, and we're not really measuring it. But we do see the results. And that's why it's so important to make these charts. You see what it does. You see how the brightness goes away when you add white, but also how when you only add water, there's streaks. The brush strokes are visible. The result is what you see, and that's what you need to play with. that is the mastery of every painter, for that matter, but especially here with the gouache, it is important to see what's going on before you go out in the fields. Now, we can add yellow, but I'm not going to do it this time. You can do it. You can add whatever you want to see what color you end up with. I want to warn you, though, that the more colors you're going to want to produce, the more confusing it is too. So if you stick with a certain system, you can remember better, okay, this color, exactly this color, I did blue and red and a little bit of white. I can add more white, then it becomes lighter. I can add more red, then it becomes a little bit more pink. I can add more blue, it becomes more purple. That is what you are going to do in these color charts. And every color chart will be exactly different. And every time you do it, it will be different. So always have paper towel with you so you can pick up the excess water and play with it that way. Like I said, to dry, you can let it dry under a stack of papers or books and add more the next day. That is something you cannot do with watercolor. So take your time doing this. Also surrender to it. I know it's the promise of going out in the field is now extended. We're going to do that much later, but you will remember these exercises. They're very, very important to understand them. Good luck, and I'll see you later.